All right. Hello, everyone. It's Natalie here from Sanskrit Blue Tarot. And in my enthusiasm and excitement about the Buddha Tarot, which most of you are aware of at this point, I've got a new, I've got a new video explaining basically how the structure of this deck functions and how that relates to the Tibetan concept of the mandala of the five families. So I figured it was probably best just to do this as a slideshow because otherwise we'll have a big mess all over my desk or I become distracted by looking at my own face and not on the content. So you know how it is when you're making videos. So that said, for those of you who maybe have been just a little bit confused, right? I found myself initially incredibly confused when the first few walkthroughs I ever saw of the Buddha Tarot. So there's a couple of things that are important to understand, and some of them I will be getting to in another video, another time. But the first one that has to be sort of broached or breached is this concept of the mandala and the way the suits are organized. So in Tibetan Buddhism, there is a simple principle behind the mandala of the five families, and this is how all of the elements of the self and of the space and everything that we know are arranged. Okay, so if we think of the tarot and the elements of tarot describing the world around us and maybe describing components of the self, really they're very, very compatible. They're very interchangeable. So without further ado, let's just talk first about the whole concept of a mandala. It's not a mandala. It's I've heard a lot of really interesting pronunciations of the words, but mandala is really probably the closest or the best pronunciation of the word. They can be really ornate, obviously, because they're invoking different deities. Okay, I believe this one is invoking Vajra. So there are different ways that gets represented. I think this is another Vajra iteration. But you'll notice the colors, right, are kind of consistently, we're getting, blue next to yellow, next to red, next to green, and then something white in the middle. So let's go back to that second one here, or the first one, right? We've got white, okay, and then we've got, interestingly, the white is out here as well. Sometimes the white and the blue are interchangeable, so that's something to know. That's kind of important, but it won't make any difference. It's interesting here, but it won't make any difference to your use of the deck, okay? So we're just going to consider middle white. Then we've got blue, yellow, red, green yet again, right? So same here. And very similar here. It's not white, it's a red deity in the middle. But then again, we get blue, yellow, red, green. Okay, then some of you have seen the Tibetan mandalas made by monks. These are from my own photos. This was of a group of Tibetan monks that came to the community college where my mom and dad were still teaching at the time. This is several years ago, and there's all of their tools. So they use these little, they're like little cones, and then they scrape them with something and vibrate the sand out. So then here's all their sand palettes, right, and the colors. These are for their arms, to rest their arms while they're working. And then, of course, they've got to draw it out, with compasses and rulers, and, it's very ornate and very specific. And they even bring their own table, for the purpose and the prospect of doing this. And then they begin creating it and filling it in, which is always beautiful. I just loved seeing all of the colors, and it was a really cool experience. They were there for 3 days creating it. Obviously working very closely, and then there's the final product, and then at the end, and it is a ritual space, and at the end of it, they take the entire mandala and they mess it all up, okay, And then after they mess it all up, it is swept up into little baggies, and participants and people who are there can have those as a blessing or as an offering to the water. This was a white Tara mandala. So there's our white Tara in the middle. And again, because it's a white Tara, the blue and the white have been interchanged, right? So she's glowing a blue light, and then there's the white with kind of this concept of blue light, yellow, red, green, etc. So yeah, there we go. So then we can see something, you know, it can be as ornate as this, right? Which is incredibly ornate. And like some of the other ones we saw can be as simple, right? This is obviously incredibly simple. This is not an uncommon one to see in certain sects, just that kind of simplicity, that we have one like this on a ceiling in Tara Mandala. This is one I just created. Or as simple even as this, right? This particular mandala is describing the essence of luminosity and of all creation and of emptiness, right? It's perfect, and it contains everything. Okay, so the one that we're looking at here that relates to the suits, we're looking at, these are the suits, and they are the 5 families interchangeably at the same time. So we have the Vajra suit, the suit of Vajras. We're going to go into greater detail with this for each suit. We have the Ratna suit, okay, or the suit of jewels. We have the Padma suit, or the lotus suit. And then we have the Karma suit, otherwise known in this deck as the Visva suit, which is double Vajras. Okay, so we have the single Vajras, and then we have the crossed double Vajras. And in the middle is the Buddha family, which essentially means that it is the major arcana. Okay, so that's the 21 majors. That would have been good to put in here, right? I forgot to do that. So there we go. So that's the basic structure. They also correspond, this is kind of important, with the 4 cardinal directions, right? So we have the center, when we're thinking of the tarot as the self, right? We think of ourselves as including the journey of the majors as the central focus. And then each of the suits offers us further detail and specificity about that journey, right? So we can think of this as applying both to any tarot deck, right? And the concept of tarot, and we can also apply it very specifically to this deck. So, you know, the difference is going to be the order of the suits and then the way that they overlap with the Tibetan system. Now, Robert in Place has made a few adjustments to the deck. And I would say to the way that he's using the system. And I feel like in his new book, he really does a good job of justifying his choices. And it's much more apparent to me when I read the book. So let's look at that in greater detail. But for the moment, you know, what we want to know is that we're working clockwise around the circle. So we get the Vajra family first, right? We're going east in the direction of the rising sun. Then we're going, so we've got the Vajra family, then he places the order of the deck this way too, right? The Ratna family, the Padma family or the Lotus family, and then the Visva or Karma family with double Vajras. So we get air with the Vajra family, we get, which would be swords. We get Ratna, which would be earth, and it's the jewel family. Then we get Padma, which is fire in the Lotus family. I know it seems kind of weird, but that is actually true to the whole thing. And that replaces wands. And then we get the Karma or Visva family, and this is our cups or water. All right. And again, yeah, the cardinal directions. Now, let's look at the Buddha family, right? So the color of the Buddha family is going to be white. So I mentioned this in one of my other videos. You know, in the first iteration of the deck, which was the Llewellyn copy, we have the white borders, and then, each of the minors was given an additional border in the color of their color family. The symbol is the wheel. So the backs of the cards actually contain the Buddha symbol, right, of the wheel of Dharma. Then the direction for this one obviously is the center, and it contains all, right, because the element of the Buddha family is space. So if we go back and have a look here, right, if you're in the center and you're holding space, ultimately, like in the same way that this is a white circle, it expands all the way out in every single direction infinitely. So it contains all of the directions and all of the families within that spaciousness, or the potential to. Oh, whoops, let's go back. Here we go. So then within each of the families, because Tibetan Buddhism is about the path of transformation, all Vajrayana Buddhism is about transformation. So it's not just about awakening. Awakening is part of the process, but awakening is not fully complete. Ultimately, in order to become a Buddha or a Bodhisattva who stays on the planet and in the primordial soup with all beings in order to help everybody, you want to transform as many of your own patterns as you possibly can into more positive ones, right? Because if we're all swimming together in the same soup with all of the good people and the serial killers and teachers and Wall Street traders and homeless people and saints and everything else, right? We want to try and improve the overall quality of that primordial soup, right? So we're going to hopefully transform our ignorance and our delusion into an all-encompassing cognizance, right? And that translates back to space. I'm going to go back to this. Here we go. Because if we've got all the space in the world, and the sky is a good analogy for that, and that's why we're using that as a background. But if we think of it that way, we think of all-encompassing space, all cognizing, all-knowing space. We can look at this idea of a white light and rainbow light. And we know, right, when we look at a prism, any form of light is going to contain all of the colors. It contains everything. And that's part of why we're using, this blue sky, and why it is also used generally, within various Tibetan sects, specifically the ones I follow. It's a perfect container. It's a perfect metaphor for what we're looking at in terms of space, and its ability to cognize or contain everything within it, right? Because this Buddha family, if we put ourselves in the mandala, it's not just this one space and everything spins around it. It's the idea that we are this, and that this one center here it contains everything. It spreads out in all directions. Okay. Kind of a big concept, but maybe that makes it a little bit more accessible, maybe. All right. So that journey, that possibility, right, of really embodying that realization is illustrated in the deck through Siddhartha's journey in becoming the Buddha. And really, it can absolutely be argued, and certainly Robert in Place does a masterful job of this. He illustrates the way in which that is, also true in the tarot, as we all know it. So through the majors, through the 21 majors and the Fool. Okay. So the next one is the Vajra family. Okay, so this is a Vajra. All right, it represents sudden enlightenment, sudden awakening. It is a masculine symbol, and it's very, very suitable to replace the suit of swords. So this replaces the suit of swords. Obviously, our direction is east, as we've been doing it. The element here is air. But in Tibet and in Tibetan mandalas, it's actually water. So For those of us who are pretty ingrained in the Tibetan tradition, this is a weird one. It's a weird one because we're associating Vajra with water, Vajra family. There's something else that we get here, but it makes sense as to why it would also be air, I think. Whoops, got a dog on my lap here snuggling on me. And he weighs over 100 pounds. So transformational pattern is anger into mirror-like wisdom. So we think of the lightning bolt analogy, which is often used with the Vajra. Okay, that or a sword, right? It's that quick movement, something that just comes out of nowhere, and and that's kind of the quality of anger. Sometimes too, anger can come on like a flash, right? Yeah. Oh, I forgot to put all of the Buddhas, but I guess it doesn't matter. Let's see. For the Buddha family, we're working with Siddhartha's family, by the way. So this would be the historical Buddha, not a primordial Buddha. So the Buddhas that we're going to describe throughout the rest of the deck are the primordial Buddhas. They don't so much matter to this deck, okay? If we were talking about, I guess that's probably why I left it out. If we were talking about the Tibetan 5 families and wanting to get really into depth with that, and we could. I don't know if anybody's interested in it besides me, but it could be done. Sarah and Nancy, those are your two of the people I think of when I think of people who might be curious about this, but you probably already know this information too. At any rate, when we get into the other families, we need to know who the male and female Buddhas are and so forth, so that we can understand the court cards. So that's why that's important. So the transformational pattern here in the Vajra family is anger into mirror-like wisdom. The male Buddha associated with this family is Akshobhya, and the female Buddha is Lokana in this deck. Another confusion here for Natalie, or anyone who practices heavily in the Tibetan Karmakagyu or Nyingmapa tradition, or Nyingma tradition. It's Mamaki in Tibetan, and they're reversed. I don't know why they're reversed in this deck. I still don't have the answer to that, and it may be that it's in the book and I just haven't found it yet. It's a lot to take in. At any rate, the female Buddha is Lokana and the animal is the elephant. Okay, so that's what we need to know. And that has just given us the three of our 4 court cards here, right? So there's our king is Akshobhya, the queen is Lokana, the knight is the elephant, and then each of them have a dakini by the same name of the suit. So the Ratna family. So Ratna family is gold or yellow. The symbol here is the jewel, or the wish-fulfilling jewel, the jewel that contains all of the potential to fulfill all of our needs and desires. It's replacing the suit of pentacles, discs, or coins because it's the element of earth, right? The direction is south, as we've covered. So the transformational pattern that we work on in this particular family is one of pride and inadequacy, and turning that into the wisdom of equanimity. So the things that catch us up as pride, etc., become more, we release our attachment to these things and we become much more equanimous. So that also is to do with giving and taking, right? Which again relates to the tarot when we think of the traditional 6 of coins. This idea of giving and taking, which comes up a lot in this suit. So then we get the male Buddha, who's Ratna Sambhava. We have the female Buddha in the deck, who's Mamaki, or it's Lokana in the Tibetan tradition. But for us, it's in this deck, it's Mamaki, and then the animal is the horse, which is very interesting. We've got a very grouchy dog. I think the cats are messing with him. Moving on, we have the Padma family. Okay, so this is the lotus family, and that's our symbol. It's replacing the suit of wands because it is the element of fire, and its direction is west or the setting sun. So if you think of something that is moving away from you, the transformational pattern that you get is craving. Like, oh no, if you think of getting older, for example, oh no, my youth is escaping me, right? Hopefully, though, instead of craving your youth as the sun is setting, this is a way to remember it, you can turn that craving instead into discriminating awareness wisdom, where you know what's necessary, you know what's needed, you know whether or not to go after something because you have the wisdom of having learned so many other things, right? Then we get the male Buddha of this suit, who's Amitabha. And then we get the female Buddha, who's Pandara or Pandaravasini in the Tibetan traditions. And the peacock, okay, which is the knight. So we have king, queen, knight. Then finally up to the north, right, where things are less affected by the movement of the sun, which kind of makes sense. We have the Karma family, which is green in color. So it's also known in this deck as the Visva family. It's green. The symbol is the double Vajra. Okay, it replaces the suit of cups, so its element is water. Again, in Tibet, it's air. It's very fast moving in the Tibetan tradition. It's lightning speed, much faster than just one Vajra. Because if you're using two Vajras, holy cow, then you've got the ability to use that kind of space. But here it has become the suit of cups. All right, and the transformational pattern here is of envy into an all-accomplishing wisdom. Because what does envy do? When we start comparing this with that, it slows us down. We slow down. And we become deluded. We become ignorant. Whereas if we stay focused and calm, we can accomplish anything. If we take which we are envious of, and we find a way to transform that energy into an insight by slowing down and resting in our space, in the spaciousness, right, of the Buddha family ultimately, right, we're going to be able to see what it is that needs to be done. So that is the spirit of this one. So the male Buddha here is Amoghasiddhi. The female Buddha is Tara, or Samaya Tara in Tibetan, but most of us are familiar with green Tara. And then the animal is the Garuda, which is a funny creature in Tibet. It's the only one here that's more mythological than anything else. Interestingly, it's the Kinara bird, which is not, it's very different, but it's similar to the Garuda. But the Garuda, for the purposes of the deck, is actually a very appropriate one. All right. So again, we have all of the cards in the deck that create this lovely mandala. And this is how they work together. This is how they work together. So I hope this was informative and at least a little bit helpful. We're going to look at the minors and the suits and understand them a little bit more in depth in another video. But hopefully this helps you just kind of wrap your mind around this a little bit. All right, folks, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Take care. Bye.